Hey guys, Darren Sugiyama here, CEO and founder of Lionsmark Capital, the most transparent premium financing intermediary firm in the life insurance business. The word transparency is something that I think a lot of people are kind of afraid of. You go to social media and everyone's pictures are filtered, airbrushed, photoshopped. I mean, nothing's real anymore. And if you look at their Facebook or Instagram feeds, you see everyone living their quote unquote best life, which is really just their highlight reel. And I'm not saying that everything you see is fake, but what people show you is oftentimes just a small sliver of what their actual lives are like. But of course, they never tell you this. So you look at what you think their lives are like, and then you compare that to your actual life. And let's be real, right? Other people's highlight reels are always going to look better than your actual reality. And I think in the life insurance and financial services industry, I feel like people do the same thing. I mean, we go to these insurance conferences and everyone's walking around bragging about, whatever, how much target they wrote last month, or they're showing off their new shiny car or their boat or whatever. And it's like one big competition where everyone's measuring, who's got the biggest, well, you know what I'm saying. And I'm not criticizing people that do that kind of stuff. They want to be flashy or boastful, that's great for them. And perhaps, some people that don't know me all that well, they might even put me in that category. But really, that's only because we haven't truly sat down and talked. And it's because they don't know my whole story. The reality is, my path in this industry has not been an easy one, let me tell you. And I've had a ton of failures and setbacks along the way. I recently did a 2-day premium financing boot camp. And at the end of day one, I did something that was very unconventional in this industry. I talked about my failures. I talked about my heartbreaks and the lessons that I've learned along the way. And I also talked about how I learned to overcome these setbacks. And believe me, I've had many, many setbacks. From betrayals of business partners to dealing with people that lied to me about their true intentions, all the way to financial hardships. Now, I would say that most people in our industry never talk about things like this because, I don't know, I think maybe they think that perfection equals power, and perfection equals success. And perhaps they feel like hiding their failures and their setbacks will make them appear to be more powerful. But I found that it's just the opposite. Real power is really rooted in being able to be transparent about failures and hardships. For me, true authenticity is really about being open about your struggles, to allow yourself to be vulnerable in front of other people. And I'm not talking about this in a weak kind of victim mindset sort of way, but in a way that lets people know that you're human. So I really feel like my confidence comes from not having the fear of being judged by other people. To me, you either like me for who I am or you don't. And if you don't, it's okay, right? It's a free country. I'm not for everyone. I understand that. But one thing that I'll never get accused of is being fake or being dishonorable, or being a liar. So in today's webinar, I'm going to share with you a live recording of the end of day one of this 2-day boot camp seminar that I did recently, where I transparently shared with the attendees how I got started in the insurance business, a lot of my ups and downs, focusing mostly on my downs, and how I've used gratitude as my true power in overcoming some of these setbacks. So I hope you enjoy this webinar. But when you grow up as the only Asian kid on the basketball court, I learned that, well, I shouldn't say I learned that. I felt like I had to create this image, this tough guy image, as the only non-black kid on the basketball court, and I'm Asian. So you better come with some little extra, or you're gonna get beaten up. And so I developed this shield, this facade, this fabricated tough guy image
from Long Beach. Anyone looked at me wrong, I wanted to fight. I carried that with me, and this is what a little insecure little boy does, is trying to find his manhood, that is struggling with this lack of having a dominant male role model to pattern myself after. So I created this image, this persona, and I carried that throughout high school and then into college. So this is me at Loyola as a ball player. At the beginning of my sophomore year, so I had, again, brought this tough guy image along with me into being a ball player and just getting in fights and everything. One night at the beginning of my sophomore year, I'm driving two of my teammates home from a party, and these guys pull up next to us, and they're looking at me wrong. God forbid someone look at me wrong. And so I can't have that, and I'm going to show my teammates what a tough guy I am. So I speed up in front of this car, I slam on the brakes, and we're doing about 5 miles an hour down a 40-mile-an-hour straight, thinking we would pull over to the side of the road. And we get out of the car, and I beat the crap out of them and reinforce this tough guy image I created for myself. So we're doing 5 miles an hour. They don't pull over, so I pull back over. And as this car starts coming up, creeping up next to us, before I could even look them in the face, I heard this big boom! And my ears are ringing, and the back of my head is burning, and I'm kind of disoriented. I didn't know what was going on, and as I looked up, that car was sped away, and it was the barrel of a shotgun hanging out the window. And at that moment, I realized we just got shot in a drive-by. Now, here's the crazy thing. Getting shot in a drive-by was not an unheard of thing. And I'm not saying it was an expected thing, but it was not shocking to me. That's a twisted mentality. So I was conscious through the whole thing. I pulled my car over into a gas station. My friend in the front seat didn't even have a scratch on. He ran in, called 911. My friend in the back seat caught that shotgun blast through my window and shattered glass everywhere. He caught it in the eye. I caught it in the back of my head. And I had so much blood gushing out of the back of my head. I ripped my t-shirt off, plugged the back of my head. A few minutes later, you could wring the blood out of my t-shirt. I was losing so much blood. So I'm still in the driver's seat, slumped over on my wheel. I passed out and didn't realize I passed out. My friend in the front seat, didn't get a scratch. He was running up. Sugi! He called me Sugi! He thought I was dead. And I came to, and I literally thought I was going to die right there in my car. My friend in the back seat is yelling and screaming, I can't see. At that time, I was an atheist. I didn't believe in God. So imagine the irony, this tough guy atheist praying to God to give him one more chance. The ambulance came, took us to Daniel Freeman Memorial Hospital in Marina Del Rey, and we underwent surgery that night. My friend had the lens of his eye removed. For me, they surgically removed as many of the shotgun pellets as they could from the back of my head. To this day, I still have about 30 of them embedded in the back of my skull. I should be dead many times over. That was the first kind of wake-up call I got. The immediate response was I actually got worse, because now I'm the guy that got shot in the drive-by that everyone knows about. They just reinforced my tough guy image. I would get into more fights. I was a very unhappy child, a very angry teenager and young adult. A year later, I met a girl. We went to church, this church in South Central LA. And I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior and went in a completely different direction. Almost to the extent where I was annoying. So I was one of those evangelical people that just wouldn't leave you alone. I see I have friends that share the same faith, but don't share the same delivery method. I'm like, man, you're turning people off. But I took that experience and I talked to a friend of mine. He said, you really ought to take this experience and turn it into something good. And so I moved to Hawaii. My girlfriend at the time was from Hawaii. I was a tutor and tutored inmates in prison that were getting their GED. And then I worked in a detention home and counseled kids that were in and out of lockup. I worked with at-risk kids in the public school system, kids that were getting physically abused at home, kids that had gang issues, kids that were living in the projects, etc. And that was the path that I was on, and I got married. And a year and a half later, my wife at the time comes to me and says, I don't want to be married to you anymore. And all of the insecurities I had growing up as a kid, the lack of feeling like a man, all those insecurities came back. And I was completely lost. So I decided I'm gonna lick my wounds, pack my bags, come back to California. And I was gonna be rich. So I heard that you make a lot of money in sales. So for the next 3 years or so, I tried my hand in several different industries in sales and crashed and burned every time. I was living at home with my mommy and daddy for a while. And heard a crazy rumor about an ex-Little League baseball coach of mine that was making over $1 million a year in the life insurance business. So I called him up, asked if I could come talk to him, drove out to his fancy office in Newport Beach, spent an hour with him. At the end of that meeting, I said to myself, man, if this idiot can do it, maybe I can do this. So I decided I was going to get in the insurance business. I'll skip that part. So this was my, can we go back to that part?
Yes.
In the process of me trying to lick my wounds, I had a cousin of mine that was 10 years older than me that was a fashion model, female fashion model. And she goes, you know, Darren, there are no tall Asian guys in this business. You should come talk to my agent. I'm like, of course, it's so obvious. I should be a fashion model. So I go and talk to the agent, and she's like, no. So I got to talk to another agency, and it's, no. And I got turned down, I don't know, maybe a dozen times, something like that. Finally found an agency that was willing to take me on. And you ever go to like a department store and you see some schmuck pretty boy in a skin-tight shirt handing out perfume samples? I was the schmuck. But then those crappy jobs actually started turning into like legit jobs. I started doing runway shows. I did a show for Donna Karan, I did Dior, I did Hermes. This was called the French Festival. So Christian Dior was one of the designers, Hermes, etc. This over here was shot, and this over here was shot in Milan, Italy. And I came to a realization pretty early on in my Zoolander career, and that was, I'm getting older and fatter and uglier as the years go on. Like, you're supposed to have earning potential doing this, and I'm realizing, like, this is as good as it's gonna get. I'm gonna get worse and worse and worse. So I said, I gotta get a real job. I gotta get a real business. And so that's when I found this rumor that my old Little League baseball coach was making $1 million a year in selling insurance. And in the process of this, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do one last job. And this job was, I don't know if you've ever heard of this woman here, her name's Kiana Tom. She had a show on ESPN called Flex Appeal. This is the #1 fitness show in the history of the ESPN network. It's in 100 and something different countries that broadcasted it. When I was in college, me and my roommates used to watch Kiana work out in her tiny little bikini on the beach and drool all over ourselves. And so my agent ends up booking me an audition to go audition with Kiana. It was like right around the corner here at this gym where Equinox used to be. And so I auditioned and I got the gig. And so now I was on set with Kiana in these tiny little hot pants, these little shorts that looked like she should have been wearing them, lifting weights. And there's a little clip from the show.
You're just in time to join Darren and I for our advanced shoulder workout. We're starting off our first tricep, which is seated presses for the entire deltoid area. If you have a weak lower back, you always want to make sure and do this exercise seated. Take the pressure off the back.
You know, these exercises are real important to keep that shoulder stabilization as you're doing bench press or any other exercise. A lot of people neglect the small muscle fibers in your shoulder. It's really important to avoid those injuries.
Right. And you should know, right? You told me earlier you had a rotator cuff problem.
That's right. That's why I have a beautiful scar on my left shoulder. And as always, you got to keep those abs tight with that lower back.
So as you can see, flexor-feelers, triceps are a great way to maximize your workout time and pump up your body.
I'm talking to the producer of the show at the end of the shoot, the rap party, and he's like, kid, your career's about to go crazy. You're going to be in 100-something different countries. I'm like, yes, I can be rich and get revenge on my ex-wife. It went nowhere. So I got on a plane, I flew to Ialong. Well, I went broke over there. So I came up with this idea that I'm going to get into the insurance industry and I'm going to build an agency. Forget being an agent. Forget going and working for some insurance company. I'm going to build a super agency, not having any idea what that meant. So this is my office when I first started out. Don't be too impressed. It's the lobby of the Four Seasons Hotel because I couldn't afford an office. Couldn't afford like this. So I ran my business out of Starbucks, Coffee Bean, and hotel lobbies. So the first week, I was quote unquote in business, if you even want to call it that. I recruited 6 unlicensed agents to come work for me. So the first week I spent in the lobby of the Four Seasons Hotel doing my sales training. Then I told them to go home, make their lists, make a list of prospects for the next week. And then the week after that, the following Monday, come back and I'll meet you in the lobby and we'll start our plan. Guess what I did the second week? I went out and I took my insurance licensing class. And then I took my exam. And I failed the first time, so I had to go back and take it again. This is how I started out, all right? This is my insurance license. This is my, my insurance license is January 2nd, 2003. This is my tax return for the year 2003. And as you see there, my total reported personal income for the year was $277. My parents thought I was a drug addict. No, I'm dead serious. Because all I did was work. And they see that I can't pay my bills. And so I'm living off of credit card advances. I had this runway model girlfriend at the time that was used to take all these rich Hollywood guys, and I'm broke. I'm driving this piece of crap car that broke down in front of her house. I had to use her AAA card to tow my car back to my house, which I then had to sell to a junkyard for $900. And now I don't have a car. Okay, this is tough times, right? Tough on the ego, tough on finances. But then things started to take off after the first year. At the end of the first year, again, you saw the tax return. I went home for Thanksgiving dinner with my parents. And I was telling my mom how excited I was about what was happening. And I got this kind of this soft endorsement from this woman that was running the benefits department at Northwestern Mutual, and she said, Darren, if the head of the agency makes me pick between you and Northwestern Mutual, I'm going with you. That meant a lot to me at that age, that early on in the game. So I went home and I told my mom this, and her response was, Darren, you couldn't possibly be that talented. Yeah. I ran out of Thanksgiving dinner in tears. And I didn't talk to my parents for a year and a half. Now, I had friends, some friends said, you got to go back and patch up with your parents. I'm like, I can't do that because I care what they think. And as long as I care what they think and they're telling me I'm not going to make it, I'm not going to make it. I have to go out on my own. I have to isolate myself. So I isolated myself. First year was rough. Second year, I figured some things out. Third year, we started to scale. And so in the third year, we were number 1 in the country with Kaiser Permanente, number 1 in the country with HealthNet, number 1 in the country with Colonial Life, number 2 in the state of California with Aetna. We were top 30 with Blue Cross of California. We were number 1 in Orange County with Blue Shield. It was crazy, like a complete turnaround. But one of the things I wanted to share with you guys, which I think is arguably the most important and most valuable thing you'll get out of this first day, is I'm going to share with you my failures. This is something that no one wants to talk about. Everyone that I know that's successful has either gone broke or come close to going broke. at least once, if not more than once, in their career. So a black swan event, this is a very unexpected challenge that you have no way of accounting for. And I got hit with so many black swan events. The first one had to do with Blue Cross. So Blue Cross calls me up in my third year and says, hey, congratulations, you're in our top 30 in California. I'm like, really? Because like I barely pay my bills, barely make rent. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, we want to invite you to our top producer trip in Hawaii. All expenses paid. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool, that's really cool. So I go on this trip, and I'm around a bunch of people like all of you. And I'm a 31-year-old, 32-year-old kid at that point. I can't afford to eat at the non-carrier sponsored breakfasts and lunches. So I'm at this fancy hotel with all these successful people, and I can't afford to eat at the hotel. So I took protein powder in my suitcase, and that's what I was eating while everyone else was at the pool ordering $20 cocktails, $30 hamburgers. So I'm like, this is pretty cool. Well, we were doing so much business. I get a call from Blue Cross saying, hey, we need to talk. I'm like, okay, what trip do you want to send me on now? And they're like, no, it's not that kind of conversation. You are being accused by this advisor of forging a client's signature and stealing the client. I'm like, what? They said, well, we talked to the advisor and we talked to the client, and they said they never signed the, they call it a broker of record letter. That's when the client decides to appoint you as the new broker. Like, I understand that you may not trust me because you don't know me yet, but that makes no sense, because if I forged a client, it wasn't even me, I was being accused, it was one of my agents. If they forged the client's signature, it is a matter of like a week and a half between the time that the carrier contacts the client says, no, I didn't sign it, the broker record letter gets rescinded, and we don't get paid. I mean, that makes no sense at all. So I find out who the agent is, and I got an attorney. I burned through $71,000 in legal fees, which I didn't have. And my attorney and I go to meet with Blue Cross Corporate, and we explain what we think happened, explain how nonsensical this is, and they said, well, we're going to think about this. A week later, I get a letter that says, I lost my appointment with Blue Cross. They've canceled all my insurance commission renewals, which is about $42,000 a month. And that $42,000 a month was keeping the lights on. So I called my attorney and go, what do I do? He goes, well, let's set up a meeting. I'm like, you already failed the first meeting that I took you on. My attorney was kicking me under the desk, telling me to shut up because he wanted me to admit guilt, thinking that somehow that would help the situation. I'm like, we didn't do this. Like, I'm not going to admit guilt for something we didn't do. So I fired my attorney. I called the agent against my attorney's counsel. I said, I want to meet with you face-to-face, man-to-man. So I met him at a Starbucks. I said, look, here's what I think happened. I would like to invite you to my office. I want you to see my operation. I want you to see all the wet ink documents that we have. So he takes me up to the offer, comes in. This guy was a hitter. This guy used to insure the Rat Pack. Remember the Rat Pack? Dean Martin and all those guys. He used to date Priscilla Presley. Let's give you an example. This guy is a high roller. After he goes through everything, he goes, I think we made a mistake with you. You're actually one of the good guys. I go, Joe, that's what I'm trying to tell you. He goes, don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of this. So he meets with the VP of Sales of Blue Cross over wine off-site, convinces her to give me my appointment back. So I get a call from Blue Cross and said, okay, we want to reappoint you, but you have to sign this agreement to not sue us. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you everything you need to know. So I call my new attorney. I go, they're offering me this crap deal. I'm not going to take this. He goes, do you want to be in the business long term? I said, yeah. He goes, then you got to sign it. Because you can't compete as a broker and be blackballed from Blue Cross, the biggest insurer. So I signed it. The problem was they didn't send notices to all of our clients saying, hey, we made a mistake with this guy. So we tried to contact all these clients, and the clients are like, we don't trust you. You got canned. So in that next year, that's when I got my crew together. I said, look, we got screwed on this deal. We're gonna make lemons out of, lemonade out of lemons, and we're gonna focus on health debt, and we're gonna focus on casa permanente. The next year, we're number one in the country with both carriers. And right after that was when I met my wife. You know how many times I've given this talk? I still get emotional. I can't talk about my wife like getting emotional. She helped our firm repair all those relationships. She called on all her carrier relationships and set up private meetings off-site to develop my relationship with these carrier executives. And we completely changed the perception of who we are and what we were doing. Then I started a consulting firm, doing business development, sales coaching. This is when I was traveling around the country doing these sales coaching events. And then I ended up writing my first book on how I built a $37 million insurance agency in less than 7 years. This is what put me on the map. 2011 hits, and I said, my wife was working for a general agency. I said, quit your job sucks. Start a business with me. So we start Pacific Bay Insurance Group, and we were doing so much business with that carrier, Colonial Life. We said, let's build a Colonial Life agency. And we did that, and I wrote my second book. This business here, we wrote so much business. We wrote 58% of all the business for Colonial Life in Orange County and San Bernardino territory combined, with a bunch of 22-year-old kids right out of college. And that was fun. The next year, I started another firm. So we got 3 firms. Da Vinci, same business model as the other 2 firms, but this one was exclusively life insurance. We were cold calling business owners at the place of business, 30 different states, over the phone, selling life insurance. Everyone says, oh, you're crazy, that's never going to work. And I wrote my third book. The Icon Effect is a fictional book with these life principles kind of interwoven into this fictional story. I don't know if you've ever heard the book The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Very similar type of format. And at the time, I felt like my life's mission, the reason I was put on the planet Earth, was to mentor young people and make them successful. I made a lot of young people a lot of money in a very short amount of time by just teaching them the principles of how to do this. And then Black Swan event number 2 hits. I had a business partner at that time. I found out that his girlfriend, who worked for us, was backdooring deals and siphoning business away from our agency into this little entity that they set up. And they were living together. I was so pissed. This is someone that I trusted. I mean, like a family member. So hurtful. So betrayed. That was just the first Black Swan event that year. In the same year, I had put all these life insurance policies on all my people. And I converted, I don't know if you know what an ESOP is, I converted my agency into being owned by an ESOP because the guy that put this together told me how many these great tax advantages there were. So we put 17 life insurance policies in place in combination with the ESOP. 3 years into it, I hire a tax attorney to come in and do an internal audit to explain to me how this ESOP actually works, right? I can't ask the financial advisor to explain it to me. He already explained it to me. He said it was the best thing since sliced bread. Of course it was. He sold 17 life insurance policies. Of course he thought it was great. So after a week of audit, the attorney comes to me and says, Darren, I got bad news. Your ESOP is completely out of compliance. You have to unwind the whole thing. You have to go back to all your people and tell them the stock value that you said they had doesn't exist. Your $600,000 in premium into these policies, you got 0 surrender value. And on top of all that, you owe the IRS in the state of California $330,000 in back taxes, penalties, and interest. So this advisor lost me $930,000 in 3 years. And I had egg on my face because I had to go back to my people and say, you don't have the stock value that I told you you have. And then we have Black Swan event number 4, if that wasn't enough. So I made this young kid a partner in Da Vinci. He was going to be my succession plan. I gave him stock, a lot of stock, in the agency. And one day, after I'm paying him a salary, and I'm not pulling any money out of the business, I'm paying for his, whatever it was, $1,700 BMW M5 car payment. I'm paying for his health insurance, I'm paying for his wife's health insurance. He comes in one day and says, I can't survive on my package here. So you're young, you have no expenses. What are you talking about? He goes, well, I got an offer from Guardian, they're gonna pay me $10,000 a month. I'm like, if you need the money that bad, like, I'll pay you $10,000 a month. Again, keep in mind, I'm not pulling anything out of the business that early on. He goes, no, I think I need to go in another direction. I'm like, okay. He says, so I just need you to buy me out. I said, buy you out? I gave you stock in the company. So I'm like, look, how much do you need? He gives me a number. I'm like, fine. You're done. The next day, he went around town telling everyone how I screwed him out of millions of dollars. Now, fortunately, I built a reputation at that time, and everyone knew he was full of crap, and I was legit, and so that really didn't damage me. But it's like, man, how many betrayals can I go through? And he pulled a bunch of advisors with him and took them to Guardian. None of those guys are still in business, by the way. I'm like, okay, I'm really going to amp this up. I'm really going to turn the lemons into lemonade. I wrote a book called Ouch, How My Financial Advisor Lost Me $930,000 in 3 years. Okay? And this was our firm brochure. We sent this out to every client that we were showing IULs to. And this really kind of set the wheels in motion. 2017, we were responsible for 25% of all life insurance policies sold in Pacific Life in Orange County. Guess how many agents we did that with? 5. 5 agents did that kind of volume. In that same year, I started Landsmark Capital, so I started doing the premium financing. Now, Da Vinci had taken a hit because of what my partner had done. My employee benefits firm had taken a hit because of what that partner had done. But then it got even worse. Black Swan event number 5. A bunch of guys I brought into the business on the employee benefits side got together. 2/3 of them got together. And when I say set up a competing agency across the street, literally across the street, in another high-rise building, and pulled 2/3 of our clients, which was 2/3 of our gross revenue. I still had big overhead. I still had payroll to meet. I had W-2 employees. I got office space. I got all this stuff. One of the people that betrayed me, I got him his citizenship. He was originally from Bulgaria. I sponsored his H-1B, set him up with the attorney. As soon as he got his green card, it was right around when this happened. Another kid got into some problems with alcohol addiction. I took him to his first AA meeting. I sat with him. He lived with me in my house with my family for a while to get him back on his feet, to make sure he stayed dry. Another one, when she bought her first house at age 24 because she was making so much money with me, I was the one that did the final walkthrough before she bought her house. These people were like my little brothers and sisters. And that level of betrayal, I mean, it was hard financially, but it was much harder emotionally. So as these two businesses are starting to do this, Landsmark Capital started to do this. The first, probably the largest deal we did was like in our 3rd year, was $70 million of death benefit. I mean, I should dream about doing cases like that. But you know how it is when you're a new kid on the block, you have some up months, you have some down months. And that business just wasn't scaling as fast as I had hoped it would scale. So these other two businesses are really struggling. So I went to Penn Mutual, and we did a bunch of business with Penn Mutual. We did 29% of all our policies sold. That was 2018. And I came up with this idea about building this hybrid model. A hybrid model meaning it was like half career shop and half brokerage. So I went to Penn Mutual. I said, look, here's what I want to do. I want to build a better version of your career shop. It'll cost you pennies on the dollar. You don't have to pay me a salary. You don't have to pay for office space. You don't have to pay for staff. I'm already paying for all that stuff. All I need you to do is help me fund a base for these new agents that are coming on board because they can't afford to go straight commission. I said, well, how much are you talking about? I said, if you could fund a $3,000 a month base for 6 months, you don't have to pay for anything else. So they said, we've never done that before. I said, I understand that, but I've got a track record to prove that I can make this work. So they cut me a check for $250,000. They'd never done it before. They said, all right, go build it. So I built it. The average production of 7 agents at $3 grand a month in salaries, the average production of those 7, 2 years into it, would have hit their what they call their Royal Blue conference, which is like their top producer conference. So I think they're going to triple down. I think they're going to quadruple down. And to make a real long story short, they pulled the plug. It's just black swan event number, whatever it is. So I'm literally like, oh my God, how can you pull the plug on this? So they pulled the plug on it, and I said, all right, now I got to go all in with premium financing. I'm sick of the agency model. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to get really tight. And I wrote the first book here on premium financing, the definitive book on premium financing. And then the pandemic hits. I swear to God, you can't make this up. But the blessing in disguise was, can you imagine if I thought Penn Mutual was going to triple down and I got more office space and I was going to recruit more agents, and then the pandemic hits and I can't bring anyone into an office? That was a major blessing in disguise. But the pandemic didn't do me any favors at all. So in the middle of the pandemic, I write the second edition to the first book I ever wrote. And the reason I wanted to do this was when I read the book I wrote at that point 10 years ago, I was mildly embarrassed because my 10 years younger self was all about the flash. It was all about the shiny objects. It was all about building this uber successful image. Started driving a Ferrari, big house, all this other stuff. 10 years later, I realized it was all crap. So I rewrote this book, and as if things couldn't get any worse, my partner in Landsmark Capital decides he wants to go in a different direction. And he lets me know via email. You ever get broken up over email? Another week goes by, advisor, case. And I was doing 4 or 5 times more than I was doing before without my former partner. 2021, I rewrote the book. You know why I wrote another premium financing book? Because I put my partner's name on the previous book, even though he had nothing to do with writing it. Because that's, to me, what a partner does. I go all in. If I'm in, I'm in. So everything that I do, I'm going to give my partner credit for as well. So I had to rewrite this and get the name off the book. And then I wrote this book. The reason why I want to share all this with you is there's a certain process I had to go through to recover from all these black swan events. In the midst of getting beaten down and almost losing everything, I mean, there was a point where I didn't pay my mortgage for 3 months. I didn't have the money. I was living off credit card advances. We burned through all of our savings, all our retirement. We were going about $40,000 a month negative every month personally. I kept everyone on payroll. I kept paying everyone. We weren't pulling any money out of the business. And I wrote this book, and it encompasses these Japanese principles. The first one is called kintsugi. Kintsugi is an art form that you may have seen before. You ever see a Japanese piece of pottery that has these gold veins running through it? So this, as the story goes, this goes all the way back to the shogunate days. The emperor broke his favorite teacup. And there was an artisan that decided that instead of trying to restore the teacup back to its perfect state before it got damaged, he repaired it with this gold lacquer. And what ended up happening is it actually highlighted the damage. And the beauty was in highlighting the damage. This is the exact opposite of what we do in our lives. We try to hide the damage. We want to put out this persona and this perception that our lives are so perfect. We don't want anyone to see our flaws or our mistakes. But kintsugi was the exact opposite, and that gave me a new insight on how do I view all these awful things that happen? How do I view all these failures? And what it got me to realize is the beauty of the story is in the hardships. It wasn't in the successes. This concept, wabi-sabi, is this. It's a philosophy. It's usually expressed in the form of an aesthetic and design. But wabi-sabi means that an object is never in its completed form. Like, you ever see like a really high-end leather good that ages over time, it patinas, and the more it patinas, the more beautiful it becomes? But again, that is like the opposite of what we're taught in this culture. In America, we're taught that everything's just be perfect and brand new and pristine. In reality, there's far more beauty in something that ages and gets better over time. That's what wabi-sabi is about. And the last thing I'll share with you here is Bushido Code. The Bushido Code is 7 core principles that samurai live by. It is these 7 principles that brought me back to life. The biggest thing I learned was how to be grateful in the midst of having less than you've ever had. How do you express gratitude when you are angry, bitter? I have found that anger and bitterness, if you let it grab hold of your spirit, everything starts to spiral. You start treating people poorly. The most valuable relationships you have, you put on the back burner. They become less important than they should be. And so I went through this process that I learned of a guided meditation. Every morning I would wake up and spend 30 minutes going through this. You start with a breathing exercise, calm yourself down, get yourself centered, and then you focus on what you have to be grateful for. Now that was a challenge because I was not grateful. I was angry. But what it forces you to do is focus on what do you have in your life that you can be grateful for, and focus on that. What happens is there was a Nobel Prize winner named Dr. Fergat, and he discovered this phenomenon that happens called endothelium-derived relaxing factor. The reason he won a Nobel Prize for this is he found that when your body excretes oxytocin, which is usually excreted when you feel grateful, this phenomenon happens to you biochemically. Your blood vessels dilate, your smooth vascular muscle tissue becomes relaxed and becomes engorged with blood. The biggest muscle you have in your body that has that quality is your heart. So whenever you feel extremely grateful, your heart gets engorged with blood. You ever have someone say, or have you ever said to yourself, I feel so fulfilled right now, my heart feels full? It's not an emotion. It's literally a biochemical thing that happens to you physiologically. Your heart is full of blood. Now, there's another part of a male anatomy that same thing happens when you start getting excited about a particular thing. And the drug Viagra was actually produced based on the phenomena of endothelium-derived relaxing factor. But when your heart feels full, you feel full. What could you possibly want for when you are already full? When you're filled inside, when you feel full inside, you can't take any more. What does that make you want to do? Give. The reason this is so important in our business is that our business is about giving. Philosophically, it's about giving, right? You're giving because you believe it's the right thing to do. We don't think of it in terms of a strategy to acquire clients, but you have to consider this. How does the client feel about you when they sense that you are 100% focused on giving because you're already full? I don't seek a commission because I don't need any more money. It's not because I don't want any more money. It's because I know that if I give, because I'm already fulfilled with the important things, the client's going to feel like that, and they're going to want to do business with me. So, I don't know if you're up for this, okay? I did this in the last 2-day boot camp. I have a pre-recorded guided meditation of me stepping you through this. It runs about 13 minutes. It sounds kind of hippy-schmippy if you've never done meditation before. All this is closing your eyes and focusing on certain things that you have to be grateful for. If you don't want to participate, it's no problem. You're just going to sit here and watch these weird people close their eyes and think about stuff. If you do want to participate, I invite you to participate. So I'm going to take you through this. It starts off with a very short 2-minute little breathing exercise. Just kind of relax yourselves. And I'm going to take you through things that you have to focus on that you might be grateful for. All right, you guys ready? All right. So we're gonna start off. I'm gonna guide you through this. The breathing exercise. Inhale very deeply, hold, and then long exhale. Deep inhale, hold, long exhale. I'll walk you through this. So we're gonna start right now.
Okay, so go ahead and inhale for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold your breath for 10 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now exhale for 10 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. Now inhale deeply for 5 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5. And hold your breath for 10 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now exhale for 10 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, last set. Inhale deeply for 5 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold your breath for 10. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And exhale for 10. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. Okay, now think of a time where someone really stepped up for you, or where they went the extra mile for you, where they didn't have to do it, but they cared enough about you to help you during a time where you needed their help the most. Maybe you didn't even ask them to help you, but somehow they knew you needed their help. Maybe they could sense it, and they came and jumped into the foxhole with you and fought your battle with you side by side. And maybe what you were going through was so rough, you couldn't even see the light at the end of the tunnel. The challenge you faced seemed insurmountable, but when this person stepped up for you, they gave you the encouragement you needed to keep fighting. Maybe they even coached you through the process because they too had gone through something similar, and they helped you believe that if they could get through it, then you could get through it too. Sometimes I think God sends us guardian angels in the form of human beings. Maybe this person that stepped up for you was kind of like a guardian angel to you. Audibly say, thank you. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. Okay, next, think of a time where a seemingly coincidence happened. I say seemingly because I believe we're blessed with opportunities that seem like coincidences all the time. But in reality, these events are not coincidences at all. They're all part of God's plan. So think of a time where maybe you met someone that changed your life. Maybe it was someone that became your best friend, or maybe someone you met as a business associate or a mentor, or someone that you could have easily not met had you not crossed paths. Think of all the things that could have happened to prevent this so-called coincidence from happening. Had you shown up just 5 minutes later or 5 minutes earlier, or had you not gone to that event or that party or that conference, that you would have never experienced that experience, and you would have never met that person, or you would have never heard that encouraging message. There have been times where I didn't feel like going to an event or watching a video or reading a book. But once I did, I realized that was what I needed to see or hear or read. It was like God knew I needed that message or that experience to help me move forward. You see, these aren't coincidences at all. These are messages we receive through divine intervention. So think of a time where something happened that seemed like a coincidence, but turned into something life-changing. Think about how easily that could have not happened. You see, that was a gift, a gift that you needed, that you did nothing to deserve, right? You didn't plan it, you didn't create it, it just happened for you. So relive that moment. Remember how it felt back then. Connect with how it feels right now, knowing that you were gifted this incredible relationship or lesson or opportunity, whatever it was, and how it changed your life forever. And now audibly say out loud, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now think of a time where something really bad happened to you, a major letdown, a heartbreaking moment, something that seemed like the worst thing that could have ever happened to you. Maybe it was a divorce, or the loss of a friendship, or a betrayal. Maybe you lost something that you worked so hard to gain, and it seemed like your life was over. But here you are, years later, and you realize it was a blessing in disguise. Had that heart-wrenching thing not happened, you wouldn't be where you are today. You wouldn't be with the people you're with today had that not happened. You wouldn't be the person you are today had that not happened. You wouldn't be so strong. Sometimes these things happen to us in life, these things that are so hurtful, that seem so unfair, these things that crush our egos and break our hearts, these things that make us doubt ourselves. Sometimes these things needed to happen to send us in a new direction with new people and new relationships, the kind of relationships we truly needed. And if we were still connected with those people from the past, we would have never met the people we're with now. In fact, if you're going through the separation of a relationship right now, I know you're struggling. I know you're hurting. I know the devastation that you feel right now. And believe me, I've suffered so many losses along the way. But what I didn't realize when I was going through it was that it wasn't meant to hurt me. It was meant to purge toxic people out of my life so those relationships could be replaced with better ones. If you're going through that type of separation right now, the great samurai warrior Miyamoto Musashi once said, never be saddened by a separation, because the separation is like cutting cancer out of your life and making space for the right relationships to come into your life. The kind of relationships that will build you into the person you were meant to be. And if you've already experienced this, you know what I'm talking about. Think about how thankful you are for what you gained out of that seemingly horrible betrayal or that seemingly horrible situation. In fact, you really ought to write those people thank you letters because they freed you to become the person you are today. Thank God you didn't get what you previously wanted. Right? You were selling yourself short, and now you realize just how much better you are without those people holding you back. This was a blessing in disguise. And speaking of people who have betrayed you, you need to forgive them. And not because they deserve it. In fact, they probably don't deserve it, quite frankly. But I'm not saying you should forgive them because it's the right thing to do either. Right? I'm saying you need to forgive them for your benefit. Forgiveness is not for the forgiven. Forgiveness is for the forgiver. Don't let those people occupy your mind space and your spirit. Don't let them have that kind of hold over you anymore. You let it go. And don't let it go because you're supposed to let it go. Let it go because you now realize that they did you a favor. They made it easier for you to move on without them. If they didn't betray you, you'd still be stuck with that person, and they were holding you back. They were keeping you from achieving greatness in your life. And they were causing more stress and drama in your life than they were bringing happiness and peace. You were like a little parasite, sucking the lifeblood out of you. And now, you're free. Again, you should be writing them thank you notes for setting you free. Free to soar and become the person you were meant to be. How we choose to define the meaning of these types of experiences changes everything. If we look at them and compare them to the outcomes of what we initially thought we wanted, well, yeah, it's depressing. But if we look at them as necessary separations that allow us to be afforded better opportunities, if we change the way we define the meaning of these experiences, then we come into an understanding that these people were a necessary part of our lives at that time, but now it's time to go to the next level. And they were never meant to go to that next level with you. They would have held you back. They couldn't have gone where God is taking you now. And for that, be thankful. Be thankful. Now, there's one more person that you have to forgive, and this is by far the most difficult person to forgive because they made so many mistakes. You've been way too hard on this person, criticizing them every day. And this person that you have to forgive is yourself. You've been beating yourself up every day, telling yourself that you should be further along in life than you are. That you've been comparing yourself to other people that have more, earn more, are more. You feel guilty that you aren't where you want to be yet. When maybe you even feel like you're letting your family down. Well, listen, I get it. I've been there so many times. You have no idea. But you see, the reason you feel this way is because you have an expectation in your mind of how your life is supposed to be. And every time something terrible happens, every time you fail at something, right, every time something doesn't work out the way you planned, you feel like it's your fault and that you screwed it all up. But maybe, just maybe, things weren't supposed to work out the way you wanted them to initially. Maybe God has a bigger plan for you. Maybe the level you're meant to rise to is far greater than what your initial goals were. So many times we lose sight of what our experiences taught us about things not working out, like those separations we talked about earlier, because experiences taught us that the worst things that have happened to us were blessings in disguise. And maybe the terrible struggle you're going through right now is a blessing in disguise. Right? It's not your fault, so forgive yourself. And stop blaming yourself for the world not complying with your every wish, because perhaps your wish is selling yourself short. Now think of all the people that hurt you. Think of all the terrible, hurtful things they said about you. And you believed these lies all these years. And they made you feel like you weren't good enough. And as you think about how all these people see you, now think about how God sees you. He loves you unconditionally. He loves you the way a parent loves their child. The way you love your children, but even more, even deeper. He created you as a one of one. There is no one in the history of the world that shares the same fingerprints as you. He made you exactly as you are. And he loves you and accepts you, even with all your flaws and imperfections. Do you make mistakes? Yeah, of course. But he loves you as a work in progress. He even knows your ass is crazy sometimes, and you get off track, and you have to get back on track from time to time. But if he loves you that much, then it's okay to love yourself and accept the fact that you make mistakes. Right? It's okay. And even if you don't believe in God, you can believe that you are still a piece unique, meaning that there's only one of you, and that alone makes you special. So forgive yourself. It's okay. Despite all your mistakes, despite all your struggles, despite all your failures, you can start building the life you were meant to live right now. And be thankful for who you have in the foxhole with you right now. You'll be thankful for the coincidences that changed your life. And be thankful for the struggles in your life, because they are truly blessings in disguise.
Now what are you expecting at an insurance conference? So, everyone has a different reaction to this experience. Some people struggle to allow themselves to go there, to drop their guard and become this vulnerable, because we're dealing with a lot of pain, a lot of suffering from our past. But again, what I've learned through this process is if you can lean into that, if you can embrace that, if you understand that these so-called terrible things have happened, that they're actually enhancing your life, they're making your life more meaningful, that they are strengthening you and building your confidence, allowing yourself to be able to endure even more, that level of confidence and that level of fulfillment inside, if you can take that into your practice and what we do as professionals, people look at you differently. They have a different human connection with you. They have a different experience with you. And so when we're talking about your USP, right? If you're approaching this business from a place of being already full, then you can give. And you do not perceive that you're there to take, which is what I think a lot of prospects, that's the way they view advisors. I have lost relationships because of being more transparent and more honest. But those ones I lost were replaced with so much better people that I'm so grateful for. Quality, not quantity. I used to be in a different office, so I was sitting in this office by myself during the pandemic, bitter, going broke, paying for the office space. And before this office, I was in an office about twice as large as this, with 5 additional offices in different states. We cover between 60 to 80 advisors, something like that. I do more with me, my wife, my right-hand gal that's actually working remotely in Nashville, and 2 sales guys. We do more with that tight-knit crew than I did with 60 to 80 advisors. I'm spending more time with less people. I'm going deeper in relationships as opposed to, I'm going deeper instead of broader. So if you can find the right relationships and the right partnerships, and really invest deeply in them, you're gonna get a lot more than trying to get everything all at once. And you'll be more grateful. So last boot camp, I just kind of abruptly stopped. I would rather get feedback from you after you have the evening to kind of think about everything we went through. You're probably going to go through a range of emotions tonight as you kind of recount this exercise that we did. You may end up sobbing uncontrollably. You may get really sad, but then really grateful. Everyone experiences it a little bit differently. But the point of all of this is to understand that all these things are meant to empower you to become full inside. So tomorrow we're going to talk about this, I guess called the sales technique. It's really the communication technique, and it's coming from a place of giving, not taking. So think about everything we went through tonight. I swear to God, if I come back here tomorrow morning and no one has anything to share, I swear I'm just going to cancel the whole thing and walk out. I want feedback from you guys, right? You guys get value out of today?
Yes.
A little different than the regular boring ass insurance conference? All right, see you guys tomorrow morning.
Thank you.